Can you believe it? In 2014, while the entire world was going crazy over Tesla's self-driving electric cars in India, thousands of people were still patiently lining up to buy a car whose design dated back to the 1950s. A boxy body, an outdated engine, almost unchanged for half a century. A paradox that seemed impossible to exist in the age of technology. But don't let that appearance fool you, because just over a decade later, by 2025, that very late-blooming nation had surpassed Japan to become the world's third-largest automobile market and the fourth-largest manufacturer globally. This is the story of a people once constrained by colonial rule, suffocated by bureaucracy and poverty, yet ultimately rewriting their own destiny. A long, rugged journey filled with unexpected twists of the Indian automotive industry. Throughout the 19th century and the early 20th century, India existed not as a nation, but as a machine serving the British Empire. Under British colonial rule, every economic policy was designed with a single objective: to turn India into a vast source of raw materials and a consumer market for goods manufactured in Europe. Industrialization, especially heavy industry and manufacturing, was deliberately restrained. Within that context, in 1897, the first automobile appeared on Indian soil. But this event did not mark the birth of a domestic industry. The car was an imported product owned by a British officer rolling along colonial roads under the curious gaze of the local population. For many decades thereafter, automobiles in India remained the exclusive privilege of the ruling class. Steel, engines, gearboxes, and machinery were all imported from the imperial center. Indians could learn how to operate vehicles, repair them, and even understand their mechanical principles, but they were never given the opportunity to design or manufacture them. The few small mechanical workshops that existed were limited to manual assembly with no core technology, no research, and no future. Then World War II ended. Britain was exhausted. Waves of national liberation swept across Asia, and in 1947, India gained independence. In the very first years of freedom, ambitions for industrialization surged. A wave of domestic enterprises emerged, laying the first foundations of India's automotive industry. Most prominent among them were Hindustan Motors 1942, Premier Automobiles 1944, Mahindra and Mahindra 1945, and Tata Group 1945. These were the foundational names carrying the aspiration to build a truly made-in-India industrial base. In the eyes of the government, they were not merely companies but symbols of economic sovereignty. To protect these young firms, the Indian government adopted an extremely rigid protectionist policy. In 1952, automobile import taxes were raised to nearly unimaginable levels, turning foreign cars into luxury items. By 1954, giants such as General Motors and Ford were forced to withdraw from the market because they refused to accept the requirement of full local production. In theory, this was meant to give domestic companies room to grow. But it was precisely here that a systemic mistake began to take shape. The licensing raj to produce a single car, manufacturers had to obtain dozens, even hundreds of different permits. Nearly 80 government agencies were involved in controlling everything: output volumes, pricing, technology, and even how many cars could leave the factory each year. Creativity was replaced by paperwork. Innovation was strangled by stamps and signatures. The result was an almost frozen market. Model choices were scarce, technology lagged behind, and quality failed to improve year after year. Consumers who wanted to buy a car had to wait many years, sometimes an entire decade. While the rest of the world entered the era of aerodynamic design and modern engines, India remained trapped in a cycle of outdated models and painfully limited production. If there is one car inseparably linked to the image of India, In the second half of the 20th century, it is the Hindustan Ambassador. Launched in 1957, this model was adapted from the British Morris Oxford Series 3, a design that was already outdated even at the moment it entered production in India. A boxy, heavy body, a simple engine, technology that had virtually stopped in the 1950s. Yet, in the context of a nation newly freed from colonial rule, the Ambassador became the perfect choice. Durable, easy to repair, capable of enduring poor roads and low-quality fuel, the Ambassador quickly took over the streets. For decades, it accounted for as much as 2/3 of the automobiles on Indian roads. Government cars, police vehicles, taxis, officials' cars, all shared the same familiar silhouette. The Ambassador was not merely a means of transport, but a part of social life, a symbol of authority, stability, and order. Yet that dominance also reflected a sobering reality. India's automotive industry barely changed as the world entered an era of new designs, more powerful and safer engines. The Ambassador remained largely untouched. Amid this stagnation in 1965, a rare glimmer of hope appeared. The Aravind Palace Special. It was considered the first truly Indian car not directly copied from any European model. Its design carried strong American influences, with tail fins, abundant chrome, and an ambitious stance. But that dream was quickly extinguished. The Aravind Palace Special received no financial backing from the government, no license for large-scale production, and ultimately died an early death. In a system where every innovation required permission, boldness became an unacceptable risk. On the streets, social reality remained harsh. Road taxes could consume up to half of a person's annual income. Cars were luxury items. The majority of the population continued to travel by two-wheelers, agricultural tractors, or noisy tuk-tuks. By the early 1970s, the stagnation of India's automotive industry had become impossible to ignore. The population was growing rapidly. A middle class was beginning to emerge. Yet, the market remained trapped with outdated, expensive vehicles and endlessly long waiting periods. In 1973, the first serious attempts to create an affordable car began to appear. Most notable among them was the three-wheeled Sapani Badal, developed by Sapani Automobiles. In terms of appearance, the Sapani Badal barely resembled a proper automobile. Its fiberglass body was light but thin and easily damaged, giving it a fragile impression at first glance. The three-wheel layout made it look more like a hybrid between a car and a motorcycle than a family vehicle. This design helped reduce costs and avoid certain tax regulations, but it did so at the expense of stability and safety. The Badal's engine was small and underpowered, sufficient for city driving, but lacking the torque and durability required for harsh road conditions. The cabin was extremely Spartan. Thin seats, almost no sound insulation, and equipment kept to an absolute minimum. In theory, the Badal solved the equation of being cheap and economical. In reality, it failed for one crucial reason: trust. Consumers were not willing to entrust their families to a vehicle that looked more like an experiment than a true industrial product. The search for a true people's car remained a dead end. The real turning point came in 1983. For the first time, the Indian government accepted something unprecedented: deep cooperation with a foreign partner. The result was a historic handshake between the state and Suzuki, giving birth to the Maruti Suzuki joint venture. The first product of this partnership was the Maruti 800. In terms of design, the car made no attempt to impress. Its compact body, boxy hatchback shape, and lines were so simple, they were almost anonymous. Yet, that very simplicity was its greatest strength. With a length of just over 10 feet and a tight turning radius, the Maruti 800 was built to survive the crowded, narrow streets of Indian cities. At its heart was an 800-centimeter, three-cylinder gasoline engine, water-cooled, modest in output, but exceptionally fuel-efficient. It was not fast, not powerful, but durable and easy to repair. Exactly what consumers needed more than impressive numbers on paper. A simple manual gearbox and front-wheel drive made the car light and easy to handle, even for first-time drivers. Inside the cabin, everything was reduced to the bare minimum. A basic instrument cluster, thin seats, cheap materials, and almost no amenities. In return, low ownership costs and easy maintenance turned the Maruti 800 into the first car for millions of families. Over more than 25 years, the Maruti 800 sold over 2.6 million units and was only discontinued in 2010. It trained an entire generation of engineers, workers, and suppliers, laying the foundation for a modern automotive supply chain. Entering the 1990s, India faced an unavoidable reality. The protectionist model and the licensing raj had run out of steam. An economic crisis forced the government to open up, loosen controls, and accept competition. At this point, foreign giants quickly made their mark. In 1998, Hyundai launched the Centro, a modern, practical hatchback, spacious enough for small families and durable enough for urban roads. The Centro became the first truly formidable challenger to the dominance of the Maruti 800, ushering in a new generation of hatchbacks. Around the same time, Toyota introduced the Qualis, a bulletproof MPV that redefined the concept of family and commercial vehicles, durable, capable of carrying many passengers and reliably stable in all conditions. And then Honda arrived with the City 1998 as a symbol of status, a sedan closely tied to the aspirations for upward mobility of a newly emerging middle class. Running parallel to this product wave were ambitious joint ventures. Hindustan Motors joined hands with General Motors, bringing Opel models such as the Astra into production and for the first time delivering German engineering standards to Indian consumers. Premier Automobiles tried its luck with Peugeot through the Peugeot 309 project, a short-lived marriage that quickly collapsed due to quality and management issues. Premier also reunited with Fiat, but the return of Italian cars was overshadowed by corruption scandals and a heavy, inefficient management structure, allowing a golden opportunity to slip away in regret. Meanwhile, domestic manufacturers began to transform themselves. Tata Motors launched the Tata Sierra 1991, its first passenger vehicle, laying the groundwork for an SUV-oriented mindset. By 1998, the Tata Indica appeared as a psychological breakthrough, a hatchback designed entirely in India, spacious and family-oriented, creating a sensation because for the first time, consumers saw a made-in-India product, confident enough to stand alongside foreign cars. At the same time, Mahindra and Mahindra concentrated its efforts on SUVs and off-road vehicles, gradually shedding its outdated agricultural vehicle image to build a strong, rugged identity. The climax of this period was the $500 dream called the Tata Nano 2008. From a technical standpoint, the Nano was an exercise in extreme minimalism, a small two-cylinder engine producing only about 37 horsepower, a lightweight body, a simple structure, and almost no unnecessary equipment. On paper, it was the embodiment of a next-generation Maruti 800, but even cheaper. Yet, the Nano quickly ran into an invisible barrier that engineers could not calculate. Consumer psychology, being labeled the world's cheapest car, inadvertently turned the Nano into a symbol of frugality, stripped of dignity. Many buyers did not want their first car to be seen as a compromise, or worse, as a sign of poverty. Early concerns over safety and quality further eroded confidence. Sales never met expectations. In 2018, the Tata Nano was officially discontinued. Even so, the lesson it left behind was invaluable. The era of liberalization proved that technology and price are only half the story. The other half is dignity and aspiration. Entering 2025, India's automotive industry is no longer a story of imitation or mere survival. It has become a story of confidence and stature. From a market once dismissed as backward, India has now surpassed Japan to become the world's third-largest automobile market, while rising to the position of the fourth-largest manufacturer globally. A leap that just a few decades ago almost no one would have dared to imagine. At the center of that market remains Maruti Suzuki. With roughly 41% market share, Maruti does not merely sell cars, it shapes the consumption habits of an entire nation. From practical hatchbacks to modern family vehicles, Maruti continues to serve as the backbone of Indian mobility, just as the Maruti 800 did 40 years earlier. But the most remarkable aspect of 2025 does not lie in that familiar dominance, but in the transformation of domestic manufacturers. Tata Motors, once closely associated with the failure of the Nano, now produces SUVs with modern design, high safety standards, and exports them to demanding international markets. Tata no longer tries to prove that it is cheap, but that it is worthy. Alongside Tata stands Mahindra. From its roots in off-road and agricultural vehicles, Mahindra has built a powerful image through SUVs with strong character, blending Indian practicality with a global design language. These are vehicles made not only for the domestic market, but confident enough to step onto the world stage. Looking back over a journey of more than a century, the original paradox seems to have been resolved. A nation once constrained by colonial rule, once bound by a maze of bureaucracy, once defeated by the dream of the world's cheapest car, has finally found its own path. Not by trying to run the fastest, but by understanding who it is and what its people truly need. If you felt this journey from the dust-red roads of the colonial era to the modern assembly lines of 2025, take a second to hit like to support in-depth historical content like this. Subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss the stories behind mechanical icons where cars are not just machines, but the fate of an entire nation. And leave a comment below which car in India's history impressed you the most. Together, we'll keep turning the dusty reels of the world's automotive history. See you next time.